James Dale Ritchie was born November 4th of 1976. An Alaskan native, Ritchie was a standout athlete during his youth. He was a bright enough star that he managed to play on the state championship football and basketball teams within the same year. Several of the players on each team would go on to successful careers in both the NBA and NFL. Ritchie had a number of options after high school, but he would eventually sign with West Virginia University in 1994 after his incredible season in high school playing both football and basketball. But Ritchie would only manage a sole semester at the school before dropping out and returning to Alaska. His life would take a sharp turn, and by 1995, he would end up becoming involved in doing and dealing drugs. He also would become involved in the local underground dogfighting circuit. By 1998, things had gone from bad to worse. Ritchie, known by his street name Tiny, would be arrested a number of times, and in 2005, Ritchie would end up serving 2 years for a home invasion, in which he was found with 2 handguns and plastic handcuffs on his person. He would serve out his sentence with little to note, but after his release, he would end up acquiring a .357 Magnum Colt Python handgun. Some years later, in 2013, Ritchie would leave Alaska to live with his parents in Virginia, leaving his gun behind with a friend. While in Virginia, Ritchie seemed like a model citizen. He stayed mostly out of trouble and had no court appearances on his record. Police noted that, by all accounts, he was a law-abiding citizen outside of a couple of low-level traffic infractions. But by 2016, after a bad breakup, Ritchie would make his way back to Alaska, where he would retrieve his Colt Python pistol. During the next few months, Ritchie would live in a trailer park and seek medical treatment for some form of mental condition, but a diagnosis could not be ascertained as to have ever been given by police during a later investigation. But Ritchie's return and time in Alaska would be much different than his time in Virginia. On July 3rd of 2016, Ritchie would begin his killings when he would shoot and murder 2 people, 20-year-old Brianna Foisey and 41-year-old Jason Netter, in the early morning hours along a local bike path. It is unknown the relation between Ritchie and the victims, or the victims with each other. Authorities did note that Netter had a record and often came into contact with police because of drug-related issues. Foisey, on the other hand, was considered homeless by choice, and who had a troubled childhood, full of trauma before eventually entering the foster care system. She was diagnosed with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder and would fall into drugs after high school, her adopted family fighting to get her the help that she needed, but held back by obstacles placed in front of them by the state of Alaska. Foisey told others that she wanted to get help and planned on getting clean, but she never made it into a treatment facility before the murders. The investigation into the 2 deaths ruled it as a double homicide, and the police managed to pick out 2 unidentified men after combing through local surveillance footage. They were listed as persons of interest, but little initially came of it, and Ritchie moved on to kill again. The third of his murders took place almost a month later, in the early hours on July 29th. Ritchie often striking very late at night or early in the morning. Ritchie would go on to shoot 21-year-old Trayvon Kendall Thompson multiple times as he rode his bike home from a late-night work shift. What makes this murder unique is that Thompson was the son of Ritchie's childhood friend. 3 girls had spotted Ritchie hanging out around the woods just before the murder took place, and even saw him grabbing the bicycle. He would take the bicycle and ride it home, leaving it out in the open for all to see. Several people even spotted the bicycle, but never linked it to the bicycle murder that took place. Police managed to get a sketch made of Ritchie from the various eyewitnesses to the murder, as well as matching bullets from the murder to being the same gun as those that killed Foisey and Netter. As police worked leads and investigated the 3 murders, Ritchie would strike again. Early on August 28th, Ritchie would shoot and kill 34-year-old Kevin Turner and 25-year-old Bree DeHusson. The body of DeHusson was found by a passerby who alerted police. Police then quickly discovered the body of Turner nearby, riddled with bullet holes. It was discovered that Turner was homeless and suffered from both schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. He had lived in several assisted living homes over the years, but never fared well within them, always ending up homeless once again. As for DeHusson, they were a noted activist, and it's thought they were on a late-night bike ride on their way to meet a friend. During that ill-fated ride, they most likely came across both men, engaged in an altercation, and was simply caught up in the middle. Police once again found the bullets that matched the other murders, and putting it all together, realized that they had a serial killer on the loose. Police alerted the local populace and encouraged them to stay in their homes and avoid going out at night, and to especially avoid isolated trails and parks after dark if they did go out. It was at this time that the FBI was also brought into the investigation to help track down the killer. Trying to play down the possibility of a serial killer being active, Anchorage Mayor Ethan Berkowitz stated that gang violence was mostly responsible for the record-breaking murders in the area, but refused to address any of the evidence that a serial killer may be active. In the following few months, local police and the FBI got 175 tips regarding the murders, and at least one of those tips singled out Ritchie as the potential murderer. But the biggest break in the case didn't come from police or FBI investigations, but by that of one Mandy Premo, the mother of Trayvon Kendall Thompson. Premo had begun searching homeless encampments and low-income neighborhoods, as well as interviewing people regarding her son and the various murders. During the investigation, she claims to have encountered an armed Ritchie near the Alaska Regional Hospital sometime in October of 2016. She stated that she contacted police after that encounter, claiming that she had found her son's killer. She told the lieutenant on the phone that she wanted to confront Ritchie, but was dissuaded as Ritchie was armed and that she had another child in her car. It seems that police were now closing in on Ritchie, who was still only a suspect of interest at the time, him having fewer and fewer places to hide out from the various investigations taking place. And on November 12th, about a month after Premo's encounter, 2 officers of the Alaska Police Department would come across Ritchie. Officer Arn Salo was responding to a call and investigating unpaid taxi fares when he came across Ritchie casually walking down the street. The officer approached Ritchie in his vehicle and requested that he stop, looking to question him about potentially witnessing a crime. Ritchie ignored the request of the officer and continued walking away. The officer then used the megaphone in his vehicle in order to get Ritchie's attention, and, without warning or provocation, Ritchie swung around to face the officer, drew his Colt Python, and began shooting at Officer Arn Salo. Officer Salo was struck 6 times. He ended up suffering massive injuries, breaking several bones and puncturing both his intestines and liver. But even with those injuries, Officer Salo managed to exit his squad car, return fire, and even engage Ritchie with his bare hands, all while suffering from life-threatening injuries. This might have been the end of Officer Salo, but one Sergeant Mark Patsky, a member of the K-9 unit with the APD, was nearby and spotted the interaction. He quickly moved in and opened fire on Ritchie, killing him dead. Officer Salo was quickly rushed to the hospital and spent 7 hours in surgery. He survived his injuries. After the encounter, the weapon that Ritchie used to attack Officer Salo was sent to the crime lab, where it was quickly identified as being the weapon responsible for all the deaths we've mentioned. Ritchie was never a suspect in the murders, and only a person of interest with whom the police simply wanted to talk with. An investigation into Ritchie and the murders continued even after his death, and on April 26th of 2017, Alaskan police announced that they had enough probable cause to confirm that Ritchie was responsible for the 5 murders, and he was officially listed as a serial killer. Thank you for listening and watching this episode of Case Files. If you liked what you saw and heard, the best thing you can do is like, comment, and subscribe, and be sure to share this video with your friends and family. Until we meet again, stay safe and never stop learning.
For you, there'll be no more crying.